So as we were releasing these, another thing that obviously you guys will get to be a part of is help directing some of the properties that you may want to see, what might help you guys to extend these a little bit further. So we definitely want a lot of feedback from you guys as you guys are playing around with these and building applications and stuff like that. Cool. So with that, that's the simple way of adding Ribbit to your applications. So we are going to, basically we go with the simple drag and drop, just to kind of recap real quick. Really no coding is needed to add Ribbit to your applications. You can set the parameters like we did for the application ID, dev ID, or the ringtone. And you can do more in the design mode where you can move elements around, redesign it, skin it, and do different things. So we've already added that. So when we first started building these components, you know, every development lifecycle always has that question of how are we going to build these, and you have to plan and get some type of structure there. We sat down, we started making up some components, but found like we were actually creating our own framework in order for these to actually work. So we decided to start looking into some other frameworks that were out there. Obviously, we looked into Caragorm and Pure MVC are the two that we looked into. I know, I believe it's Mate or Mati or something that's just come out for Flex. It's just Mate, okay? It's just come out for, it's purely a Flex framework. But, you know, that would be an interesting one to check out to see how that one works. So after testing out both of those, we really came upon going with Pure MVC. One of the reasons why we wanted to go with Pure MVC was it just seemed a very small learning curve. Plus, Pure MVC has a nice structure with different languages. So not only does it work for AS2 and AS3, they also have Cold Fusion, they have PHP, they have some different ones out there that use the same framework. So if you learn this one framework, you can almost port that over to another language and kind of be right in there ready to go. So how many people here have actually used Pure MVC before? Know about it? Okay. For the people that have actually used it, how have you found that? Have you found it a good framework or that's helped out? Yeah? Any case studies or anything that... Yeah. I think sometimes with the people that haven't learned MVC, is sometimes it looks like there's more files and it looks a little bit more daunting than it really is. Because sometimes you just sit there and go, well, why do I need to create 5 files to kind of have to do one thing? But once you realize that some of those files can actually extend outside of that one thing and be able to build 3 or 4 different components on it, it actually becomes reusable code. It organizes it very, very well, and you can extend it very, very easily. So we're going to get into what is MVC a little bit, and then we're also going to go into an overview of how Pure MVC actually works. And then we're going to get into the code samples of the Ribbit voice component, so you can actually see how we structured Pure MVC to this. Basically, my talk on Pure MVC is how we implemented it into our components. I know there's a lot of extensibility, there's a lot of layers, there's lots of different ways to do things with Pure MVC. So basically, this will just be covering how we implemented it into our components. So yep, basically go through the why. It's an existing framework. It's an open source framework. So it's really understandable to start learning this technology. And Pure MVC actually has some great documentation and code samples on their website. It's puremvc.org. They have some really great stuff there for you to actually download, check out. You can actually see their Flex examples. You can actually see the source of everything there, so you can see how Pure MVC works. Okay, so MVC. MVC basically stands for Model View Controller. It's a design pattern that's been publicized for a long time. And I think Pure MVC has done a really good job of implementing this pattern and providing an architecture for this. So what does that really stand for? Model. Model is basically your data that you want to have. It could be a value object, just some data. It can go and retrieve stuff from a database and pull it back. Your view, easy. It's your UI components. It's how things look, how things are rendered on the screen, everything like that. And then your controller, it executes all of your actions. So whenever you need to do some logic, most of the time you want to have that in your controller, because you really don't want your data to do a lot of logic, because it's just data and you don't really care what it's going to do. That's what your controller is going to do. And you really don't want to do it a lot on the model side, because you just want that to render back to your UI and push things back. So you have just a little bit of a controller in there. So with Pure MVC, they've taken this model view controller and they've broken it up into 3 basic sections that coincide with that pattern. So with the model, you're going to have things called proxies. So you're going to see a lot of things, when you're going through the code, like you're going to have with the login component, you're actually going to have a login proxy, which is going to go, and that's actually where the Ribbit service goes out, does our Ribbit request that you've seen earlier, and it basically sends out a login command, brings back all the events. If we're doing a call, it basically will go out, pull back in a call object. That's your data, and that's your model. So that all happens in all of the proxies out there. Your views are set to mediators. Mediators are just kind of the go-in-between between the actual UI component and being able to push that data off to either the controller. You can also access straight to the proxy if you want to from the model, or from the mediator if you want to. So it just kind of, as it sounds, it mediates between basically the end UI and the data and commands. And so then the controller, where all of your process, your logic, your functions are going to be in the command. They're called commands. So you'll have a login command, a login mediator, and a login proxy, just really for the login component itself. Okay, so we already talked about that. So here's this really great, crazy looking octopus sci-fi looking thing that's on Pure MVC. They distribute that out. And I know this looks really, really crazy. I know the first time I looked at it, I thought I'd never understand this. But as you can see here, it's really just broken up into the different sections like we just talked about. You have your view side, which acts as all of your mediators to your UI, your view components. You have your model side, which is all of your just data objects, and your proxies talk to that. And then you have your controller and commands that basically do all of the processes there and do your logic. And so that's the Pure MVC way of doing the MVC design pattern. The other thing that Pure MVC implements is a facade to the whole project. You can use the facade as a core to kind of register everything together, to talk to each other. Or another way you can do it too is you really need the facade to do a startup. It's just like going into a building, you need to go through the front door, and the facade really kind of starts that up. Thanks, Tom. So the facade will start up everything, get your components built, and we'll go through some of the code and you'll see how we actually register the facade and generate that it kicks off the commands to actually build the different proxies and mediators. So as you can see the whole thing in a nutshell there. Now you're probably wondering, what are all the lines going back and forth? And this is how they actually communicate to each other. And this is a very important process of Pure MVC itself.